What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you live after the Eagles' massive win in Baltimore. First win ever in Baltimore against the Ravens, 24-19 to improve to 10-2 on the season. First in the NFC East. I appreciate everybody who tunes in. We're live on YouTube right now, so everybody who comments, we'll make sure to get your comments in and read and react to them in real time as we react to this Eagles game. Thank you to all our subscribers thus far. For the game, I continue to just be absolutely impressed with this team. This is absolutely incredible stuff that they are getting better week after week. They're getting more and more dominant week after week. And speaking of being dominant, Nick Sirianni said this in his press conference, but they asked him, what do you have to do to deal with the Baltimore physicality? No. F that. What do they need to do to deal with our physicality? And that was the name of the game. And we're going to get into everything on offense because there's a lot of talk that needs to be had about Saquon's MVP campaign and how the offense in whole kind of regroup themselves at different points in this game, both after the first quarter and after the third quarter, to put on two dominant performances in the second and fourth quarter. But for 4 straight quarters, we have to start with the defense because that was an all-time performance at every single level. And I think, as we know, going into a game against Lamar Jackson, it is really, really tough to contain him. It is really, really tough to eliminate the big plays within that Baltimore offense. Shane Half brought this up and he posted it on Twitter, but that was the #1 DVOA passing offense in the league in over 2 decades, since 2007 with the New England Patriots. And we all remember how good that team was when Tom Brady linked up with Randy Moss. That's the level that the Ravens have been performing on offense, passing the ball this year. And the Eagles, after giving up points on the first 2 drives, and even on those drives, you saw positives that you were really, really happy about, including a sack by Josh Huff and overcoming some penalties, making a stand. Even then, after giving up 9 points, they were absolutely dominant for the rest of the game. They allowed 1 field goal, and then from then on out, it was just simply a garbage time touchdown. They were obviously aided by some special teams miscues with Justin Tucker, but all in all, this was a all-time classic, dominant Eagles defensive win. And when it comes to Lamar Jackson and containing him, part of the thing to do is making sure you're not overplaying him, rushing off the edge, and opening up running lanes for him. And he also is very, very skilled at, elaborating. So even when he doesn't run and take off, he's able to extend plays and push the ball down the field. I didn't count yet 5 times where the Eagles overran him on the edges or opened up rushing lanes for him or made it really, really tough on themselves, where he was just extending plays and they worked themselves out of the plays with the pass rush. On almost all cases, the front 5, because you have to include Zach Bond in the 5 at this point, did not ever overrush him. They just simply, on almost all cases for Jalen Carter exclusively, won their one-on-ones and got pressure into his face. And even when that doesn't result in sacks, it's still huge because you're getting his footwork off and it's making it so that throws are tougher and they can't push the ball down to the field. He was able to do that a few times, but in reality, it's nothing close to what we're used to with him and with that offense and what they're able to do. That front 5, again, I'm including Zach Bond with the front 4, but they were, again, we've been saying this since week 3, dominant up front. They won in the trenches, and we talk about the offensive line winning in the trenches so much that sometimes our defensive line gets overlooked. They were so good today in containing Lamar Jackson. And that doesn't mean winning a foot race and chasing him down. That means staying disciplined and forming a bubble around him. Like if you've ever seen the Simpsons movie, when they put the bubble over Springfield, that's what the Eagles were able to do to Lamar Jackson. I was so impressed because it takes not only discipline, but physicality as well. Because you can always say, oh, we're just not going to overrush on the sides on Lamar Jackson. Yeah, but then if he can stand in the pocket for 11 seconds, it doesn't much matter anyways, because it's just going to tire out your secondary. But what the Eagles were able to do was win their matchups with the offensive line, get pressure in the backfield, and not overrush him and able to contain him and force some errant throws, even get some sacks there too, including a huge sack from Zach Bond, who pushed them out, quote unquote, out of field goal range for one of those misses in the third quarter that really sent the game momentum wise over to the Eagles. Even though we know Jalen Hurts doesn't believe in momentum, I'm still a big believer in it. And I'll tell you what, after that miss, I was really starting to feel it when the Eagles were up 14-12. So I mentioned Zach Bond. There's a few guys. We do the helmet stickers just like College Game Day does. And you can give it to pretty much anybody on this defense. Zach Bond's probably going to be the guy today who gets the credit, as he well deserves. 13 tackles. And if you guys were watching the post game afterwards as they were interviewing him, there was a drug test in his locker today. So a drug test and 13 solo tackles for Zach Bond today, including half a sack and a tackle for a loss. He was really, really good. But the guy I really want to highlight, because I just can't get enough of watching him, I find myself so transfixed with just watching his position on every single play, is Jalen Carter. He wins his one-on-ones so much that I think you could call a hold on every single play. And I'm starting to think that officials don't call holds on him, because if they did, they'd have to call it every play. It's like a dominant big man in the NBA. If you call the foul every time he got like his arm swiped or something like that, you'd have to call a foul every play. Well, that's Jalen Carter on the Eagles defensive line. He's so dominant that I think at times that's why you're not seeing those holding calls, because if they call it once, they're going to have to call it 10 times. That's how often he's beating his man. You saw it last week. The Rams made a conceited effort to double team him, and he was still causing havoc even with those double teams. And you saw it again today. Even when he doesn't get home, and he did against Lamar Jackson a few times, including a huge sack at the end of the half to stop that drive and hold them to a field goal. Even when he doesn't get home, he causes so much pressure and chaos that it just stops everything that you're trying to do as an offense, both in the running and the passing game. I thought he was key to this game, because if he's constantly living in the backfield, it makes it really hard to get going. And speaking of getting going, that leads me to the next point, which was stopping Derrick Henry, who was under 100 yards rushing today. And in the early going, he did have some good runs, but as the game went on, the Eagles started to wear on that offensive line and get to Derrick Henry. And everyone has said with Derrick Henry for about a decade now, oh, you just have to tackle him at his legs, tackle him at his feet. Yeah, everybody has a game plan with Derrick Henry until Derrick Henry stiff arms them in the face. And part of getting his feet moving and everything like that is making sure you're getting into the backfield so you can stop him from starting. That's always been the key with him, but that's not how life works. That's not how usually things occur, because that means you have to beat the offensive line, get into the backfield, and then stop Derrick Henry. Well, a lot of teams can't do that. You saw that nonstop with the Eagles today, where they did a great job of getting to Derrick Henry's legs because they were winning in the trenches. They were able to get to Derrick Henry because they got through the wall of defense in front of him to do so. It made sure that he wasn't hitting the second level, and it was very rarely that a secondary member had to come up and make a tackle on him, although the tackle of the day on him did come from a member of the secondary, and we'll touch on that in a second. But they won in the trenches, and you saw it with all three Georgia guys. I just talked about Zach Bond having 13 tackles and how dominant Jalen Carter was. But there's a moment there in that game where Jordan Davis beats his man, and he's in the backfield almost as soon as Derrick Henry touches the ball, and he doesn't get the tackle on that, so he won't get credit on anything. Not a sack, not a tackle for loss, not even a tackle in general. But he does exactly what everyone's been saying to do with Derrick Henry for a decade now, which is stop his feet before it gets going, and it allowed the cavalry to come, and it's no game. And on that drive, the Eagles forced a punt, and it was the first time in the game that they had forced that punt. When they drafted when they drafted Jordan Davis over Kyle Hamilton, who's on the Ravens now, in the first round a few years back, that was the vision, that on first downs, he could disrupt things so often that it would constantly put teams in second and longs, second and 10s, second and 12s, and obliterate their run games and force them to throw on all three downs. Take the predictability factor of it and make it really, really tough on teams. That's what Jordan Davis did on that play. It led to a 3-and-out. It led to the first punt of the game for the Eagles, and it got them on track. And I know that won't come up in any box score, quite literally, but it's exactly what you were paying him to do. And he'll probably always get overlooked as long as he's with his running mate, Jalen Carter, because of how dominant Carter is. But when I see that on the field, I'm thinking, yeah, this was the vision. This was the vision with all these guys. Nolan Smith had a sack today. Nakobe Dean, who left for a play, and I was worried he was injured, came back. He had a few tackles on Derrick Henry today. Jalen Carter might be in Defensive Player of the Year conversations at this point, and even Jordan Davis did his job. So it's starting to look, with how this is going, that they are 4 for 4. on those Georgia kids and drafting them. And I'll say this, I think those kids are very, very talented. Like, we knew it coming in that maybe Nolan Smith was a project, but all the other guys, maybe Nakobe Dean was a bit undersized, but all these guys had supreme talent. What brought that together? Another great strategy game there with the Eagles and with Vic Fangio, who deserves a lot of credit this week. You could tell, again, there was a bubble around the Ravens offense that prohibited them from plays down the field. It prohibited Derrick Henry from getting to the second level, where you're having your secondary members try to tackle him at his feet, and he's just stiff arming them. And they prohibited Lamar Jackson from extending plays and getting out of the pocket and taking off with his legs and creating that way as well. And even in the plays where they did succeed, there were a lot of jump balls, 50-50 balls that Lamar was throwing. So it was a great job strategy-wise, where they just shelled up, stayed in phase, and did a great job from secondary linebackers to the defensive line. And I know I'm talking about the defensive line a lot, and I think that's because they don't get a ton of credit and they get overshadowed by other guys. But, man, let's talk about it. I'm going to watch that Cooper DeJean hit stick on Derrick Henry for the rest of my life. That's just one of those plays where you're going to say, I will always remember where I was when Cooper DeJean hit stick that guy. That's the play that you're going to try to recreate at your Turkey Bowl game next year. That's the play that everybody in the Philadelphia area, whether you're from Delco, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, if you're a regular guy, that's the hit that you always envision that you can make, except Cooper DeJean's actually living out that dream. And it's not just the fact that he hit him. It's the fact that he always seems to know exactly where the fuck to be on the field at all times, which is a really underrated aspect for a lot of young guys these days. And again, it's not just that, and it's not just the physical traits, but also just the discipline to tackle him the way that he did. Again, everybody has a plan on how to hit Derrick Henry until it's time to hit Derrick Henry. And it not so often doesn't work out for people, and you end up on a highlight clip. Well, this time, Derrick Henry ended up on a highlight clip from Cooper DeJean. I go all the way back to the bye week. And what we were talking about when they were 2-2 in this team, they needed to get healthy. But beyond that, we thought about A.J. Brown getting healthy, the offensive line with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata getting healthy, guys like that. And Devontae Smith had a concussion at the time. The most underrated part of getting healthy was getting Cooper DeJean on the field. He may have been healthy at the time, but he was not starting because he missed training camp with an injury. After the bye week, they inserted him in the slot, and this defense has just never looked back. There's other factors to that. Jalen Carter's been so dominant. The other guys at defensive end position have really stepped up, like Nolan Smith. You saw Jalex Hunt today. But such a large portion of this offense is just solidifying your third corner and your slot corner in Cooper DeJean and having a guy that you can rely on the field nonstop for 100% of the snaps. Because now you have two of them in the secondary with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who are two rookies who play like veterans. So coming out of that bye week and getting healthy wasn't just simply getting A.J. Brown back. It was getting Cooper DeJean on the field. And since he's been on the field, they have been absolutely lights out to the point he is now hit sticking Derrick Henry. And again, just another one too. We didn't mention him a ton today, but Quinyon Mitchell was only thrown at 4 times today. He had the knee injury that scared you a little bit, but he was able to get back on the field. So the guys that left the game early, Nakobe Dean, Quinyon Mitchell, getting back out there. Reed Blankenship did leave with a concussion, so that was a little bit scary. But I'll tell you this, another guy, as we keep throwing out these helmet stickers for pretty much everybody on this defense, he will not get a ton of credit because there's so many names to go around. But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a perfect guy to have in these games against the likes of like the Baltimore Ravens. Because when the name of the game is physicality, the way he hits people and the energy that he plays with is so much needed. And I think there's times where we get on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for missing a tackle, albeit he's been way better since the bye week, the key here, in the past 2 months. But having a guy like that who is not afraid of physicality, not afraid of bringing energy, not afraid of even hyping his guys up. When Reed Blankenship left, you could see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just all over the field in that game. And he had some hits in this game to tell you, yeah, this is playoff football. This is how it should feel. This is how it should feel in December when it's cold. You should be fearing getting hit by guys like that. And I think that kind of gets overlooked because there are other guys on the defense who are balling out, and because we may have had criticism for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the past, but he was awesome today. And I think he's a guy, there's a key to that. Like there's an absolute key and a spot for him here and a place for him here when he plays like that in the cold months and the playoff months. He's the type of guy that matters in December, January, and hopefully February. So I know we talked a lot about the defense there because pretty much everybody deserved their own helmet sticker, their kudos, their praise, and they're all keys to it. And you can say, once again, discipline, in phase defense. They play a lot of mistake-free defense. They force a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. They're able to stop runs. They're very dominant, and they're very strategic with Vic Fangio. And I wanted to touch on that a lot, but let's get to the offense. With Saquon Barkley, it is now going to be a very, very interesting MVP race between him and Josh Allen, because this is a quarterback award. And it's not that Josh Allen doesn't deserve it, but I do think that there is enough ammunition behind the Saquon campaign that you could really see him actually winning this award. He's now second in the odds because he overcame Lamar Jackson. And that's why I kind of think that this agenda and campaign does have a lot of firepower to it. When I think about it, he beat Derrick Henry, the second best running back in rushing yards this season. He beat another MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson. He had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown, so the stats were there. And he had what we refer to in college as the Heisman moment. In that second half, they're up 14-12. They kind of were not being able to get things going on offense. They only ran 6 plays in the third quarter, 2 3-and-outs. They came out the next drive, immediately installed Saquon Barkley, getting him touches, and he capped that drive with his Heisman moment, running through a weak-ass arm tackle and root for a touchdown to solidify and close that game. That was Saquon's marquee MVP moment, and it came against another MVP candidate, and it came against the league's second leading rusher in Derrick Henry. All of the tools are there for this to be a legitimate MVP campaign. And I know it's a quarterback-driven award, and Josh Allen, like I said, probably deserves a lot of this credit, and he may still win it. But I think in the limelight and in the national spotlight, like Saquon Barkley has been the past few weeks, he is going to get a lot of votes and is going to be a really interesting final month of the season in this push between Allen and Saquon Barkley for the MVP. And I am not going to blink twice if Saquon Barkley wins it, and I probably think he deserves it at this point. So another thing in the Eagles offense that I wanted to point out, because we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley every single week, but the other shining star in this game and the other shining star in this offense, the Eagles have not lost a game when A.J. Brown plays. I'll just say that again really quickly. They have not lost a game this season when A.J. Brown plays. And this was, again, without Devontae Smith this week. This was, again, when the offense struggled in the first quarter. How did they reset themselves? And it's not always just turn and hand it to Saquon Barkley. They didn't run play action in the first quarter. They came out in one of the first plays in the second quarter, play action to A.J. Brown, slant, 12 yards. What got them going on another drive? Play action over the middle, A.J. Brown, 16 yards. And then, of course, A.J.'s pretty good at yards after the catch. He can get yards after the catch. He sets up everything. So I know, and especially in that third quarter, everybody was screaming at their TV, you got to just hand it to Saquon. You just got to give the ball to Saquon. But it's not as easy as just handing the ball off to him 3 times. They're going to stack the box on you. They're going to load up and bring pressure on you. They're going to do a lot of different things to make sure when you see them in running formations that Saquon Barkley is not going to get to their second level and create yards of 10 to 12 to 80 and beat you with the home runs that he is capable of. Well, what's the best way to get Saquon Barkley going? Make sure there are other assets in your offense that they fear. And A.J. Brown is absolutely that. He had only 4 receptions for 66 yards, but I think every single one of those is key because it sets up everything else that you want to do. Tony Romo in the broadcast was talking about the RPOs, but what gets the offense in rhythm and moving is that play action pass to A.J. Brown. And then once he gets you some yards and gets you a chunk play, then everything in the game plan and in the game script is available to you. And then you feel more confident in running your RPOs because it's not just simply the defensive end having to worry about crashing down. It is an entire defense having to worry about, will A.J. Brown beat me over the top? And when Devontae's back, him as well. And when you have to worry about those guys beating you over the top with the play action, then you get a little hesitant on the RPOs and on the read options. And that's what happened with the Eagles today. That first drive when they scored their touchdown on the RPO pass to Dallas Goedert, that was the most beautifully executed drive they've had all season. It favored everything that they want to do. Play action passing to get the ball to A.J. Brown. He got you yards after the catch. You then were able to open up some running lanes for Saquon Barkley. And then if they crashed down on him, it opened it up for Jalen Hurts to take it. Tony Romo did a good job illustrating that today. And I think that is 80% of it. But the final 20% is having a passing game that they fear with A.J. Brown. And he was awesome today. And again, Jalen Hurts and this team, the resiliency of them. Jalen Hurts, you look at his resume now. He's beaten Lamar Jackson. He's beaten Josh Allen. He's beaten Patrick Mahomes. He's beaten Matthew Stafford. He's beaten Dak Prescott. He's beaten Kyler Murray. He's beaten all of these big names. Baker Mayfield. Like, he's beaten every big quarterback name that we have in this league. He just keeps winning. They've won 8 straight. This team is now 10-2. And it is another game where they faced resiliency early. They're facing a playoff team on the road, a place they've quite literally never won before. And they're down 9-0 early. They've gotten every single penalty that you can assume. You're in the group text saying, just not today. It's just not going to happen today. The Ravens score on their first 2 possessions. The Eagles go 3 and out on their first 2. It's looking like the offense is rigid. It's looking like they're not going to be able to stop the Ravens. It's looking like a lot of fumbles for a while weren't going the Eagles' way. It was bouncing off a Raven right back to them, and they weren't able to recover. Nothing felt like it was going their way. And in the end, they still were up by double digits in the fourth quarter. It's pretty impressive, and I think we need to give Jalen Hurts a lot of credit for that, for really just like never losing his composure and never letting things slip away and grabbing. I know he hates momentum and doesn't think it's a real thing. I still believe in it, and it's pretty ironic that he doesn't believe in it, because I think he's really good at never letting it sway too far to the opponent and making crucial plays. I come back to the 3rd and 7 in the second half, the throw that he had to Dallas Goedert on the crosser that they used earlier this year on a 3rd down to Dallas Goedert in a similar position on the field against the Saints that went for 60 yards to set up the game-winning touchdown. They went back to that today. Jalen Hurts hit it again. Good night. Game over. Give it to Saquon and let's go home. So he deserves a lot of credit there. So the Eagles now move to 10-2. They've got Carolina at home next week. They've got back-to-back home games with Carolina on the 8th and then the Steelers on the 15th. The Steelers obviously will be a great game because they're 9-3. They play chaotic games all the time. They've got a great defense, and they were lighting the scoreboard up today. Highest scoring game in the NFL so far this season between the Bengals and the Steelers. So they've really taken off with Russell Wilson. But I want to say that to say we should not be overlooking next week's opponent in the Carolina Panthers, because Bryce Young, good for him, has really put it together since he's been named the starter again. And I'm actually really happy for the kid. But next week, please remind me of that, because I'm going to hate him if he's pulling off these comebacks that he did against the Bucs and against the Chiefs, if he's doing that at Lincoln Financial Field. But again, stick to what you've been doing really well, and they've been doing a ton of things really well. Get after him on the line with some of those young guys, the Jalen Hunts, the Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. Live in that backfield. You'll get a holding call. I promise you. It'll come. One of these days, we'll get those holding calls. So we'll capture it all this week. But the Eagles are in a great spot. They're 10-2. First in the NFC East. You're now starting to believe in this team as a true contender that is 1-1A with the Detroit Lions, who for the first 3 months of the season, we thought were so far above everybody else in this league. Well, it's now starting to feel like with this Eagles defense, you could go in anywhere against any team and be able to compete. And that goes even for the Detroit Lions. They stay on their heels with a huge win in Baltimore and 8 straight wins since the bye week. Credit to everybody. All 53 players, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, Nick Sirianni, Vic Fangio, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley for MVP, Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown. A full team win. We love it. We love to see it. Thanks for everybody who tuned in. We'll be back this week. Again, we'll preview Carolina coming into the link against the Philadelphia Eagles. What a win. Let's do it again next week at home. We'll talk to you then.